Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in to another book review. I'm still getting over a bit of a sore throat, so if I sound a little croaky, that's why. But anyway, today we're talking about one of the most famous heroes in Korean literature, Hong Gildong, and I'm using the Penguin Classics 2016 translation by history professor, short story writer, and novelist Minsoo Kang. And I have a physical copy of this, but I forgot to take it off the shelf before I started recording. But anyway, this version, the Penguin Classics edition with the Minsoo Kang translation, has a terrific introduction by Minsoo Kang and notes as well. And this version of the book, this translation of the book, was picked as a best book of the year by NPR and the Washington Post. And this helped it reach a much wider audience outside of Korea. So why am I reviewing this book? So Hong Gil-dong is really more than a character, really more than just a Korean character. He's a cultural touchstone. If you might have heard people refer to Hong Gil-dong as Korea's Robin Hood, and that is a useful way to think about him. He's also been described. I think Minsoo Kang described him in an interview as a kind of native superhero. So a kind of a figure, sort of folk cultural figure, folk hero. Who keeps getting reinvented for new generations and new eras. Let me just in this video I'll walk you through the story and what Minsoo Kang's translation adds, and then also about a very interesting authorship debate and how that debate changes how we read the story. So Kang calls Hong Gildong arguably the single most important work of prose fiction of Korea, and a quintessentially Korean figure who's still ubiquitous in the culture today. So the story's been adapted many times for TV and film and comic books and various other adaptations. And it's a fantastical story about a boy born into nobility who possesses incredible intelligence and magical powers, who embarks on a series of adventures. And for a long time, the story was believed to have been written by a Choson dynasty poet and statesman called Hyo-gyun, who lived between 1569 and 1618. Sorry, excuse me. It was also thought that the story was a reflection of Hyogyun's radical politics for the time, as well as being the first piece of fiction composed in Hangul. And this was the script invented by King Sejong in the 15th century. However, as Kang explains in a very fascinating introductory essay, this is quite likely not true, and the story was quite probably written sometime later. So I'll come back to that in a minute or two. So why this translation? So there have been other translations, but Minsoo Kang's translation was pitched as being new and definitive for two main reasons, really. So first, it's very lively and readable. And second, it's based on a very strong textual foundation. So Minsoo Kang presents the earliest and fullest text in a way that's accessible to English readers such as myself. And then the sort of the back matter and introduction are genuinely helpful and insightful, especially if you're new to classical Korean fiction. And Kang makes a very clear argument about how to read the book. So enjoy the adventurous romp. Yes, so don't feel bad about enjoying the adventure aspect of the story and the scrapes that he gets into and so on. But also notice how the hero's status anxiety and social critique are embedded into popular entertainment. So before I get into the debate around the story's authorship, what is the basic story of Hong Gildong? So the narrative is essentially split into three sections. The first section starts with a dream. High Minister Hong has a dream about the birth of a son who will be talented physically and intellectually and possess incredible magical powers. However, this child, who is Hong Gildong, will be held back by his status as a second son. At the time of the story's setting in the Choson dynasty, it was customary to have one official wife, but wealthy men could also have a number of concubines. The illegitimate sons of the concubines were not recognized legally and could not enter official service to the government. This will eventually pose a problem for Hong Gildong. And the first section of the story depicts his childhood as he develops his magical powers and the scheming machinations of the various people, various characters surrounding his father. In the next section of the book, Hong Gildong has left his childhood home and is now roaming the countryside. He eventually becomes the leader of a group of bandits who proceed to rob and steal from various corrupt individuals until they come to the notice of the king. And then the final part of the story is the most fantastical as Hong and his bandits travel to a distant foreign land and establish a new society. So that's the basic skeleton or outline of the story. You have adventure, satire, and fantastical wish fulfillment, and a hero who essentially refuses to accept this rigged system. And for a long time, the story was believed to be a critique of not only the unfair treatment of second sons and their status in society, but also just of Choson society in general. However, Minsoo Kang argues in this edition that the truth is actually much more complicated. So, if Yogyun didn't write the story of Hong Gildong in the 16th or 17th century, who did write it and when was it written? So Minsoo Kang traces the origin to sometime in the mid to late 19th century. The first reference to the version known today is found in 1867. So it's actually much later than was originally thought. Furthermore, the writer is unknown, but most likely not a noble Yangban or anyone from the elite class or upper levels of society. The writer was, in fact, most likely a low born commoner. And rather than being a pointed critique of the structure of Choson society during the Choson era, the story was probably produced for profit and mass consumption by the general public. As such, Kang argues that the political aspects of the story may have been misread. For while the story does reflect the frustrations of second sons, which was a common theme at the time, it does not support the analysis that it's an attack on the way society was structured. So, in other words, Hong Gildong isn't necessarily trying to overthrow the system, he's just trying to be recognized within it. He just wants to be treated as a legitimate son and be seen as official. And that nuance is important. It matters when we think about the ending and what that promises and what it doesn't. And yeah, so like I said, fascinating and enjoyable tale, and Kang's introduction really does make the reading experience that much richer. And there's several sort of big themes that come through. So, for example, we have status versus merit. So Gildong is extremely competent. He's sort of hyper talented. And this is obviously in conflict with his birth hierarchy, right? He's a second son. And so the novel lets us relish his victories, but reminds us how costly his exclusion is at the same time. We also have justice as a kind of a spectacle. We have these very romantic outlaw episodes that are quite theatrical in a way. We have Hong Yudong humiliating corrupt monks and officials in public and forcing the powerful and the elite class to see their own hypocrisy exposed in front of them. And then we have this idea of escape or reform, right? This final act is one of the ones that's most interesting to interpret. So this is where Hong Gildong tries to found a new kingdom, and it's almost as if you can't fight the system, you can't change the system, or if you can't, if the rules won't bend or accommodate you, then just build a new society somewhere else. And is that possible? Another interesting thing about Hong Gildong is just the sheer cultural afterlife, just the impact and the ongoing presence of Hong Gildong in popular Korean culture. Also, very amusingly, I'm an English teacher here, and every year or two, you have to go and get a new criminal background check. You have to make a little visit to your local police station, fill in a couple of forms. And when you're filling in the forms, there's like an example form, like a guide to help you, fill in the form. And the name they use on the example forms is Hong Gildong, right? It's like a kind of placeholder name, right? So Hong Gildong is such a ubiquitous character in school books and comics and dramas and movies and so on. That the name is just so common, it's kind of like John Doe or something like that. So if you're filling in a form in Korea, you might see like an example form that has the name of Hong Gildong on it. And so Hong Gildong is also just someone that people, I think is sometimes evoked when talking about like fairness or just righteous. Righteous troublemaking or something like that. And when I was editing this script, I originally reviewed this book back in like 2021 for a radio station. And when I was editing the script today, I noticed there's a 2016 Korean film called Phantom Detective. The Korean title is Tamjong Hong Gildong. And it features this Hong Gildong character as like a private investigator. And so you can see that it sounds pretty good. I haven't watched it. Maybe I'll try and watch it today. But so you can see that Hong Gildong still is still very much part of popular culture. And I think that constant reinvention is a big part of the appeal, right? Hong Gildong you can just keep updating him to be whatever a given generation needs from its folk hero, right? And another thing is, don't be put off by the classic nature of Hong Gildong. It's not a dusty old classic. It's very pacey and full of sort of magical trickster energy. There's big set pieces, sort of magical set pieces, and kind of action and adventure set pieces. There's a fun band of bandits. There's a dynamic hero who's always 2 steps ahead of the bad guys. And a lot of reviewers, if you look at some of like the social media reviews, will point out this aspect, that it's just really fun, right? There's magic, there's murder, there's monsters, there's sort of Machiavellian court scheming and all this kind of stuff. And this translation lets you just kind of jump right in without really needing to know any background. But at the same time, you still have this sort of social sting there too, right? So any of Hong Gildong's triumphs are kind of a jab at a world that doesn't value him because he's a second son. And I don't know what else to say. Maybe it's worth knowing a little bit about the Choson era society. This was an era, it's kind of a cliche now, but it's sort of deeply shaped by Neo-Confucian or Confucianist hierarchy. So you have the sort of the issue of legitimate versus illegitimate sons, and officials versus commoners, this type of thing. And so this sort of pressure cooker environment is where Hong Gildong comes from. And so anyway, yeah, if you're curious about Korean classics and you want an accessible first step, then this Penguin edition and the Minsoo Kang translation is perfect. You get a very brisk main text. You get this thoughtful introduction and lots of excellent notes if you want to dig deeper. It's also an excellent pick if you teach, if you're a or teach literature and you want a, short, discussable classic with a clear theme and a huge cultural footprint. Anyway, it's a blast to read. Just a fascinating cultural artifact. You can read it as folk entertainment or as social critique or both. And it's very easy to see why Kang calls it arguably the single most important work of classic Korean fiction, and also why it keeps sort of spawning these adaptations or remixes or whatever. So anyway, if you've read Hong Gildong, tell me which section worked best for you, or which translation. Do you have maybe you prefer a different translation? And if you've seen any of the adaptations, just leave a comment, let me know, and I'll try and check some of them out. Anyway, I'm Barry Welsh. This was Soul Book Club. Thanks for watching. Keep reading. And I'll see you in another review, which probably won't be today. Take care, people.